This is the real reason samurai abandoned shields. It has nothing to do with honor. You have heard the explanation before, the idea that Japanese warriors considered shields cowardly, that they would rather die than hide behind a piece of wood. That version sounds romantic and fits perfectly with what most people think they know about bushido. The problem is that it is mostly wrong. Physics tells us the actual answer, and that answer is far more interesting than any myth about warrior honor. Every major weapon in the samurai arsenal demanded two hands. Drawing a 2-meter longbow from horseback while holding a shield is physically impossible. Executing a proper katana cut with one arm cannot be done. Wielding a 6-meter spear while carrying anything else does not work. Japanese armorers found a different solution by turning the armor itself into a wearable shield. One construction technique even had a name that literally translates to the words "the shield is not needed." Here's exactly how this happened. The weapons came first. Understanding why samurai did not use shields starts with examining what they used instead. The Yumi, Japan's longbow, stood over 2 meters tall, with some reaching nearly 2.5 meters. An asymmetric design placed the grip 1/3 from the bottom, which was not decorative but purely functional, allowing mounted archers to shoot without the bow striking the horse. Historical war bows pulled at draw weights exceeding 40 kilograms, and drawing that kind of weight demands your entire body, both hands, and full commitment. A shield would render the primary samurai weapon completely useless. For centuries, the BOW defined samurai identity through a philosophy called Kyuba no Michi, meaning the way of horse and bow. Mounted archery during the Heian period from 794 to 1185 was not just a battlefield skill, but the core of what being a samurai meant. And then there is the katana, which works nothing like the movies suggest. Two-handed use was built into its design from the start. The cutting technique, hasuji, involves casting the blade like a fishing line and drawing it through the target using both elbows, with the ideal power distribution placing 70% in the left hand for power and acceleration, and 30% in the right hand for guidance. Swing a katana one-handed and you lose roughly 75% of its cutting effectiveness. Miyamoto Musashi's famous two-sword fighting style earned its revolutionary reputation precisely because traditional technique locked both hands onto a single blade. Polearms tell the same story. The naginata stretched about 2 meters with a blade between 30 and 60 centimeters, requiring sweeping two-handed slashes that proved devastating at dismounting cavalry. Yari spears ranged from just under 2 meters for samurai, all the way up to 5 or 6 meters for Ashigaru infantry formations during the Sengoku period. What this means is that every single primary weapon locked up both hands. Shields were not rejected out of pride. They simply could not coexist with the entire weapons system. Armor became the shield. Japanese armorers refused to leave their warriors exposed, and their solution was to build defensive features directly into comprehensive body armor. Oyaroi, meaning great armor, emerged around the 10th century for mounted cavalry archers as an essentially box-shaped shell. Between 25 and 30 kilograms of protection required over 2,000 small lacquered scales called kozain, and completing a single suit could take up to 265 days. Double and triple layered plates reinforced the edges through a technique whose name said it plainly. The shield is not needed. Armor evolved alongside warfare. The Maru offered a tighter fit at 10 to 18 kilograms, and that fit suited infantry combat better after the Muromachi period. Tosei Gusoku, or modern armor, appeared during the Sengoku period with large iron plates instead of small scales. It was designed specifically to stop bullets while allowing faster mass production. But here is where the real innovation shows up, in the specific components that replace shield's functions entirely. Sodei's shoulder guards measured roughly 33 by 40 centimeters as large rectangular plates, and historical sources note that these function as shields against flying arrows. Warriors could twist their shoulders toward incoming fire and position these plates defensively. Kabuto helmets were made from anywhere from 3 to over 120 individual riveted steel plates with fukigaishi wing projections designed not for decoration but specifically to deflect arrows away from the face. Armored sleeves called kote wrapped the arms in iron, mail, and splint plates. Menpo face masks covered the face from the nose to the chin in iron or leather. The result was a warrior encased in protection from head to toe, with no gaps that needed a shield to cover. The shields that actually existed. And this is where the story gets more complicated, because the statement that samurai never used shields is not entirely accurate. Tate were large wooden standing shields fixed to the ground with support legs, standing roughly 100 to 150 centimeters tall. They protected camps and guard towers and gave archers cover while reloading. Ashigaru foot soldiers used these primarily, not mounted samurai. Handheld shields called tere existed from the 3rd through the 8th centuries in wood, iron plates, or lacquered rawhide. Only 2 known appearances of handheld shields show up in early medieval Japanese sources, both in 13th century picture scrolls. One researcher noted that the handheld shield shown in historical scrolls is the only one they are aware of in the world. Sengoku period warriors developed something called teikataba, bamboo bundle shields built specifically to stop arquebus bullets. Round musket balls could not penetrate bamboo's flexible strength, and Takeda forces used these at the Battle of Nagashino in 1575 for cover during their assault. The most ingenious defensive innovation might be the horo, a silk cloak stretching over 6 feet that inflated like a balloon when riding at speed. This created an air buffer that arrows could not penetrate. The television show Ancient Discoveries tested horo with period-appropriate Japanese bows and found it surprisingly effective. A tradition surrounding horo warriors reveals how valued these cloaks became. When one died in battle, custom called for decapitating him and wrapping his head in his horo silk. European knights made the same choice. If this really came down to practicality rather than honor, similar patterns should appear elsewhere in the world. They do. European knights carried shields extensively through the early medieval period because chainmail and padded armor left gaps that needed covering. Kite shields evolved into heater shields and eventually bucklers over the centuries, but after 1350 that changed dramatically. Shields declined to the point where they were hardly seen outside of tournaments by the mid-14th century. The reason mirrors Japan exactly. Full plate armor made shields redundant, and two-handed weapons like longswords and poleaxes proved more effective against both lightly armored spearmen and heavy plate. Both cultures arrived at the same conclusion independently. When armor covers everything and your best weapons need both hands, shields become unnecessary weight you are better off without. Chinese and Korean warriors maintained shield traditions throughout their military history, which makes Japan stand out as the major East Asian culture where elite warriors abandoned handheld shields entirely. Weapons and armor systems simply evolved down different paths. The idea that shields were dishonorable had to come from somewhere. Tracing that source reveals the problem with the explanation. Some sources point to the Hagakure's philosophy of facing death directly, but context matters. Yamamoto Tsunetomo wrote the Hagakure between 1709 and 1716 during peacetime. He had no personal combat experience, and he worked as a scribe. Modern understanding of bushido draws heavily from Nitobe Inazo's 1900 book, Bushido, The Soul of Japan. That book presented an idealized interpretation aimed at Western audiences. Historian Karl Friday, who holds an actual mastery license in a traditional sword school, paints a different picture. Samurai were terribly pragmatic warriors in his assessment, masters of ambushes, raids, and arson. The cultural explanation looks more like a post hoc rationalization of practical realities than an original cause. Friday's definitive statement on the matter holds that Japanese warriors never developed much interest in handheld shields, probably because of the incompatibility of this sort of armament with mounted archery. The samurai's shield-free fighting style grew from practical factors converging over centuries. Mounted archery locked up both hands for bow and reins. Armor design integrated defensive features directly into what warriors wore. Weapon systems all demanded two-handed use without exception. A clear arc runs through the evolution. It starts with mounted archers in the Heian period, moves through Mongol-influenced adaptation, shifts to infantry emergence, expands into mass infantry with firearms, and finally settles into peacetime ceremonial preservation. Shields existed throughout Japanese military history in various forms. Tate barriers, today hand shields, take-a-taba bamboo bundles, and the ingenious horo balloon cloak all served defensive purposes. But the combination of two-handed weapons and wearable shield armor made personal defensive equipment unnecessary for the samurai class. The real story has nothing to do with honor or cowardice. Japanese warriors looked at their weapons, looked at their armor, and engineered a different solution than the rest of the world. That solution worked for over 1,000 years.